Hey, everybody, it's Dave here on this Sunday, the day after the draft, and we hope everybody got some sleep. It's been an exciting last 3 weeks, and myself and Darren over there are here to talk about it. We got three themes today. We're going to start off with theme one, which is the Vikings draft that was. We're looking at the 2023 draft, who we actually took, who we look forward to seeing on the field, who we might think makes a difference. Then we're going to hit the undrafted dudes that we picked up. I think this was probably one of the best UDFA classes the Vikings have selected in a long time. Darren may share that opinion with me. I will have to find out. And in the third and final one, we're going to grade the draft. Not this one, though. Everybody talks about 3 years back. We're going to look at the 2020 draft. And then we're going to compare it to how it may come about for this draft. Should be fun. Next on 2O Bloggers. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey everybody, it's Dave here, Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers. Been commenting publicly on the Minnesota Vikings for over 2 decades apiece, and nothing's stopping us yet. So here we go. Darren, how are things in the Great White North?
They're good, Dave. Weather's getting better. Actually walking around in shorts this weekend. So that's the first time in like 7 or 8 months.
Cool. Hey,
I'm happy.
Well, we're supposed to get to 88 here today, so not to rub it in. Well, say hello to everybody here. Chuck, Mary, Davey, Chris, Raymond, of course, good old Raymond's here, and MWO. Thank you for making an appearance on this Sunday and spending time with us. So let's get this show rolling. I named it something simple, the Vikings Draft of 2023. As you can see there are the 6 players we selected in the draft. Starting off with the one man in front, Mr. Addison, who's already demonstrating he has swag. So, let's go on to theme 1. Boom. We've got there, let me get rid of that, Percy Harvin.
And why do we have Percy on there? Well, just a little bit of a factoid. As the Vikings had their draft on the weekend, and they had the 6 picks. Only had 5 going into the draft day. Bumped it up to 7. Some trading here and there. Ended up with 6. But that is a low number for Viking fans. We're used to seeing a lot more draft picks. The Rick Spielman years from when he was general manager from 2012 until 2021, and even before when he wasn't general manager, but he was sort of de facto general manager, at least on the player personnel side. He had that philosophy, right? I want 10 draft picks at least, and often it was more. Well, we only had 6 last year. Kwesi Dofamenso is his first year's GM. He had 10 draft picks himself. So, but this year we had 6, and that was the least amount of draft picks that the Vikings have had. They've selected since the Percy Harvin draft in 2009, when we only had 5 draft picks. And Percy was a guy we selected number 1. We also got Big Phil Lodeho in the second round. Big Phil And all the other three that we picked were Asher Allen in the third round, who was terrible as a cornerback, and then Jasper Brinkley in the fifth, and Jamarca Sanford was sixth or seventh round.
And
And Jasper, yeah, but he was a pretty good special teams player. Jasper
yes.
Brinkley was a starter for a couple of years and was a role player for us as a run stopping thumper. Although he wasn't always good at stopping the run either. Sanford ended up he was a starter in 2012 when we got the wild card that year, the Adrian Peterson year. But anyway, that for 5 picks that was a pretty good draft. But just a little bit of factoid there. The 6 picks were, again, not as much as we're used to, and we had some big, long waits. We had a 79 between the first round pick we made and then the third round pick we made. The last pick of the third round, there was a 79 pick gap there. Then we had another big one between, I think it was the 5th round, and when we picked again in the 7th. I can't remember how many picks was. So it was there was some long waits for Viking fans over the weekend, but it was still an exciting weekend. And just looking over the draft, everybody's got their own opinion, of course, but I kind of felt that, and Dave, you'll chime in here though, is I thought that it was a draft that I think maybe it lacked a little bit of sizzle, if you want to say.
Not for want, though. Not for want.
But we just didn't, the talk early on in the pre-draft about how are the Vikings going to trade up? Are they going to go after one of the big quarterbacks? Are they going to go after Stroud or Richardson or Will Levis? And the Vikings didn't make that trade up, and they didn't end up trading back a little bit later in the first round, like some of us thought they would, and I thought they would, or they didn't trade out of the first round to get more picks and into the second round. They didn't do those things, and so, and even the players that they pick, maybe might not have quite, I don't know, might not be some of those big upside players, that we're always talking, guys are talking about. We'll see about that.
Now, the big almost disappointment that had Vikings fans all grumpy is the best way to put it for the most of the draft was we'd all been hyped up during the week of rumors that the Vikings are trying to get Anthony Richardson. And we're all getting psyched up that, yes, the Vikings are going after their guy. He's going to be in purple. We're going to see how it works. They're talking about trading up to number 3, but it seems too expensive. It would be the biggest jump ever, at least for the Vikings, to go get somebody. They wanted to get in front of Indianapolis. Indianapolis was who they were worried about. But the more realistic trade up to get him is if he fell into that, 10 range, somewhere in there. Well, as we know, the draft panned out. Quarterback, defender, quarterback, right? And that was it. Vikings didn't have a chance. And that, by the time they got quarterback, defender, quarterback, they got to Indy, boom, they picked Anderson. So we're like, well, we blew that one, is the general sentiment, and people started getting rah, 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 rah. And so we're waiting, a bunch of people screaming, now we're on trade back. Let's build some picks. We get down to 23, and the Vikings are sitting there waiting to the last minute, last second. As Kwesi put it, he was on the shot clock. And they couldn't get a trade partner that was offering enough for them to trade down. So they selected. And they selected Jordan Addison.
They did. And Tyler Forness on the weekend, especially after the first draft night, he talked about it and the whole trading up thing and the buzz about that. Well, the Vikings didn't really have the draft assets in this draft or even in next year to really be able to I think put together an appealing package for other teams to move up. So that was a big issue. And somebody, I think it was Raymond, was commented on Kwesi didn't panic in this draft, and I think that's that's good because panicking leads you to make some rash and sometimes incorrect decisions. But
Christian
it just be
Ponder. Thanks,
yes,
Raymond, for that. I appreciate that.
uh,
Good words of
I
wisdom.
I think that just because I'm saying that this draft lacked a little sizzle, it doesn't mean the Vikings didn't get good players. I think they did. They got good players. They got players that are going to help them this year, which is important. And Jordan Addison, their first pick at 23, is a prime example of that. He's a guy that, yeah, he's got as every player, there's going to be things that people are going to nitpick about and are going to point out that some of his weaknesses and contested catches and maybe his size are two of those, sure.
His
But
speed, is adequate. It's not fast. He doesn't run a 4.3. He runs, just under a 4.5.
well, yeah, that's plenty fast. There's Troy Williamson was fast, but couldn't catch the ball and he couldn't run routes, so it didn't really
That's
do the speed
right.
didn't do him much good. But Jordan Addison is like the Vikings potentially they may have got the number one wide receiver in this draft class. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see based on what he's done at college, I don't see any possibility that he's going to be a Laquan Treadwell bust. He's going to be a guy that I think is going to be productive from day one. He's probably going to be your starter in day one. And if you're worried about what the Vikings are going to do post Adam Thielen, well, I think this pick solves that, even in the first year. And people who are disappointed with the Addison trade or the draft pick, and I thought that the Vikings probably should have went corner there, but this is a guy that when he's catching 80 balls next year for about 1,000 yards, nobody's going to be complaining. And he's going to make an impact. I think he's going to be a very good player for us for a long time. And that's what you want from any draft pick, even and particularly at a guy that you pick at 23. So no issues there. The Vikings in the draft, they had, we talked about it, that they needed to build up the cornerback room. Well, they did that. They drafted 2 corners in this draft now, and Mekhi Blackmon, Jay Ward, guys that can do different things. So they addressed that. They got their quarterback they got a developmental quarterback in Jaron Hall in the 5th round. He's a guy that's a true athlete. Again, he's got some problems, but he's not going to have to start or even play in 2023. You got a whole year to develop him, take a look at him, see what you got, and then see in 2024 reassess whether you got to take another, whether you've got to take another big and step and try to make a big move at quarterback, or whether Hall might be your guy. As a 5th rounder, the chances of that traditionally, historically, aren't that great, but he's got a lot of things to like about him. As an athlete, as a passer, his accuracy at times, his ability to make plays off a schedule, all that stuff. Again, developmental guy, that's what a 5th round guy is. And the Vikings, they say, you often hear the mantra, Dave, about how you should probably take a flyer on a quarterback almost every draft.
Almost every draft.
The Vikings have not done. Yeah, the Vikings have not done that a lot in the past decade or so. The Kellen Mond one didn't work out. Jaron Hall might not work out, but it also might. Worthwhile in the 5th round. I really like.
If he does work out, it's cheap. Right?
Yes,
it's like hitting the lottery. And there are those that are taking in later rounds that do hit. It's rare. It's less than, easily less than 10% just to get to where they start. It's even smaller than that where they're good. It's a chance. It's a spin of that lottery to see, hey, can we hit on this? If not, can we develop somebody who's at least, eventually going to replace like Nick Mullins or somebody and stay on the cheap side? We'll find out. I was looking at some of his stuff. I do like what he does. He's going to get tons of throws coming up. We're going to see him in preseason a lot.
And we want to see him in preseason a lot too, because yeah.
So we're going to be able to make our own judgments on how he works at the pro level, and I look forward to it. And plus, it's also somebody that's not threatening Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, in no means, is going to be pissed off that
Nope.
they got this guy because they got him in the fifth, and it's going to be, he's not a threat. All right, I'll show you some of the tricks and of the trade type deal. Hopefully, he does, and we'll see what develops out of it. We have the quarterback coach to develop these guys. That's what we're hoping for, and let's see what happens.
And I really liked what the Vikings did on day 3. They got, Jay Ward was their first pick, a guy who's played in the slot. He's been a corner. He was a safety last year. He's like good tackler. He's been a team leader, noted for his character at LSU, and a great special teams player. I think he blocked 2 punts last year, just last year. Like this guy, and he's the kind of guy, the ability, Brian Flores talked in his presser availability about he likes defensive players who can do multiple things. Well, Jay Ward is that kind of guy, and so he was the first pick in the 4th. We talked about Hall. I really liked.
I think their second pick is the same sort of guy. That he can play multiple spots as well, whether it's outside or inside in the slot. Now, Ward here is slot, outside safety, in the box safety, just about everywhere. One of his big selling points is that he is good at all of those. And, Kwesi was talking about it this week on one of the post-draft night pressers. It's like we had people when the scouts and they're in the building that look at these guys and go, and they put down on their sheet what position he should play. And some of them put safety, some of them put outside, some of them put slot. And he goes, well, we can see him starting in all 3 of those. Well, it's great that we have that Swiss Army knife with how Flores likes to run things and match it up, right? Match up individual matchups. So if, say, Lewis Cine is great coming into the box and staying on a particular receiver, he'll keep him on that receiver during the game, move him around. Well, they need somebody else to go back and play safety. Well, you might have somebody like this flop back and be that extra guy. They're going to game plan it to attack individuals and match up and give them the roughest times possible. And having somebody that can play 3 positions will be golden. It's going to be one of those things that, the coaches rely upon to fill in holes and that we don't lose a beat. And that's why I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, you don't see that very much in the secondary where a guy is good at the slot. You usually got a slot guy who's slot only, an outside guy only, and you usually don't find safeties who can cover wide receivers. Right. Or if you put them on a wide receiver, it's bad news for your team. But so Ward's an intriguing guy. I really like the pick of Jacqueline Roy, who's going to be like we signed Dean Lowry. We don't need a lot of defensive linemen because we're running a 3-4, but we could use some help there. And Roy, he's going to a guy who's going to be like not a lot of starting experience at LSU, a junior. So he's a guy that, again, you can build with him, you can develop him, but he's going to come in and he potentially could be like an Energizer bunny, quick guy you can use on stunts and twists, penetrate gaps, make a ton of plays at the line of scrimmage, and in the opposing offensive side, their side of the line of scrimmage. I'm really excited to see what he can do in preseason and what we're going to see from him, because
watch him develop into a pro level defensive lineman. I think so too.
And then their final pick, McBride, from the running back from University of Alabama, Birmingham. Only one other running back at FBS. He was the second leading rusher in FBS last year. To get this guy in the 7th round, Dave, Tyler talked about it yesterday, like a tough, compact guy, not going to go down on first contact. Yeah, maybe he's not the explosive home run hitter that a Dalvin Cook was coming out of college or some other guys, but the guy just gets yards. Yeah, an issue because we don't know. He only was targeted 9 times on passes in his college career. He only has 5 catches in his college career. Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler catch that in the first quarter. So there's some things to issues there on the pass side of thing, and we know that pass catching is such a big part of being a running back these days. But when it comes to running the ball, this guy is tough, hard nosed, can good vision from what I'm reading, and again tough, can get the tough yards, but it can also get beyond that. This is a guy 17 touchdowns I think last year, rushing
He
touchdowns.
was
This is
UAB's offense.
yeah, like this is a guy he could be your number 2 running back at the start of the season, or maybe even your 1A by midseason. I'm really stoked to see what this guy McBride can do in the preseason, and again to get him in the 7th round, that's a hell of a value I think by Kwesi Adofo-Mensah.
Well,
And
Kwesi said they had him as a starter level back.
yeah,
And then when he was there at the 7th, they couldn't pass him up. They had to
hey,
take him.
and I think you got his selection. You're looking at re-signing Madison, Ty Chandler in the wings, even Kenny Nwangwu. You got to believe that this selection means that the Dalvin Cook trade has got to happen at some point in the next
At
month
some
or
point
two.
in the near future, between now and shortly after June 1st, something will happen with Dalvin Cook.
But yeah, so again, as always, interesting trade or draft time, and I think this is I think this is a time where to point out that whatever you think about the Vikings draft, is let's point out that the guys like Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and his scouts and the pro personnel guys, they put in hundreds of hours over the year, maybe thousands of hours, looking over tape, meeting with players, talking to people who know the players, their coaches. They've been trained to what to look for. So, they know what they're doing a lot more than me. So let's put that out there. But, if I'm going to give a grade to this draft, I'll give it a B plus, a B for the picks that Kwesi made. And the B plus comes because of that guy in the picture. I consider TJ Hawkinson part of this draft class because the second rounder that we didn't have this year was part of the compensation we paid Detroit to get TJ Hawkinson. And nobody's complaining about getting TJ Hawkinson and giving up a second and a fourth next year for it. So add TJ Hawkinson to this draft class and the 2024 draft class when you get around to it.
That is it. I thought it was, when I go back to look at it, I'm pleasantly surprised. Now, for the viewers to note, we'll go deeper dives into each one of these guys in future episodes to see what it might look like and how they might fit in better, and look back at what they did in college a little bit and stuff like that. We'll get to know them better as time goes on. I know we should have a rookie minicamp coming up sometime relatively soon. And
I believe that the plan is that our own Tyler Fornes is going to dive into each of these guys and do what Tyler does. My plan is for the next basically 7 episodes after this one is I'm going to highlight one of these draft picks, actually 6 episodes, highlight one of these draft picks and kind of tell you what I saw watching some of the games of these guys and what I think of them from like a fan's perspective. And again, like what we might expect them to do with the Vikings next year and beyond next year, and how they fit into the offense or the defense that they're coming into.
Exactly. And it should be fun. That brings us to the end of theme 1 and on to theme 2. And this, folks, is where I have to apologize. No more graphics for this show. I didn't have time Sorry. We will promise to do better next week on the graphics. We're back to a more of a normal schedule rather than just the draft. But in theme 2, you wanted to talk about the undrafted dudes.
I did, and no need to apologize, Dave. You had about like 20 minutes to prep for the show with all the work that you were doing from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Saturday with the draft. So I think our viewership will they'll be able to get over it. But
Well,
yeah,
they're going to see
yeah,
some more great graphics in the future. They know what to expect, and some future artwork as well. Especially if I get my all the logos done for Fan First Sports Network, which I'm on. We're part of, but I've got the contract to do some of their graphics, and still have a good week and a half's worth of work left on that as well. And then we'll get more after that. So we're growing. We started with
yep.
over 50 affiliates, and we're heading well over 300 in all major sports. So, and
Impressive.
we just got a Chicago affiliate this last week. In y'all know when SB Nation fired just about every team in the NFL, they kept 9. Well, 3 of the teams that kept are in the NFC North. They fired the Vikings and kept the Packers, the Bears, and the Lions. The Bears now have their own FFSN affiliate. We're hoping to get the Lions. I wanted the Lions this weekend because I wanted to harass them. I wanted the Green Bay Packers there so I could harass them. But we don't have them yet, so we move on. Theme 2, the undrafted dudes. Who do you like? There's a couple that I think are going to be outstanding.
There's a couple that anybody who's been watching any college football or paid attention the past couple of years probably are very enthused that the Vikings signed. And yeah, like after the draft happened, Kwesi Dovamensa and the gang were still busy. I think a few hours after the draft, they announced these 15 signings of these undrafted free agents from the rookie class. And yeah, I mean the two big names that are going to stand out for everybody. The first one is Ivan Pace Jr., the linebacker from Cincinnati and Miami of Ohio before that. But yeah, he was expected to be drafted, but the fact that he's 5'10", scared teams off, obviously. But hey, the production is undeniable, David. Of course, like last year, 136 tackles, 20 and a half tackles for a loss. That is a lot, it seems to me. And then he had 9 sacks, too, for a guy who's a linebacker. I was just watching a bit of some of his, not his tape, but some of his highlights. And these are highlights, but man, he is a fun player to watch. Really excited about what he could do, what he might be able to do for the Vikings. Again, issues with that size. How's he going to hold up in coverage? Is he long enough? He's not tall enough? He's not long enough? All those kinds of stuff. But man, when you produce like this, like Ivan Pace Jr. produced last year and in previous years,
you
well
can
worth
that if you keep producing at that level. I watched his tape down at the Senior Bowl where he's doing drills. They were doing pass blocking drills. They had running backs pass blocking against rushing linebackers. He did not lose a single one. He made at least 20 running backs look silly. There was only one that came close to even a tie with him. He beat everybody and made some of them like they weren't even standing there, straight to the quarterback dummy. And it was like, damn. Now, that's a one-on-one drill.
Yes.
You can't take a whole lot. You got big bodies in between, right? The running back's also going to try to shove you into the lineman next to him. But it was, just looking at it, it was impressive compared to what normally happens when you get some running backs that do know how to pass block and it'll come up and bam, and it shocks and stops the rush there in a second. That's why the first hit is always, you wanted a powerful bang, That goes for your lineman as well, because you can stun a guy temporarily, and that buys that extra, few tenths of a second. There was none of that. He was just thoop, 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 boom, gone. And it was just, I look forward to seeing him on the field and seeing how he can handle a full lineup going against the big boys and how they do.
But for a guy with that production, regardless of what his size is, I don't care if he was 5'5", you're not using a draft pick on him. Well worth the shot and to see what he can do. At the very least, he's going to be probably like a special teams demon for you, where the length and the height on coverage is not an issue. And I think
where
that
I'd
pace,
expect him to start.
Yeah,
Raymond asks,
exactly.
do you think he'll start? No, I don't think he's going to be one of the starting linebackers. But he will probably start on special teams.
And if you looked at particularly our kickoff coverage last year, in the last 9 games or so, that we need guys who can tackle and cover now. But looking at pace, I think that for pace, when you're the undrafted rookie free agents, of course, they don't have to sign with the Vikings. They can go with whoever, go to the highest bidder. Mm-hmm. Well, for pace, I think that for him, he's looking at the Vikings inside linebacker unit, and he's seeing Jordan Hicks. I think he saw an opportunity here. He's seeing Jordan Hicks is only signed for 1 more year. Brian Asamoah, who we think is going to be the other starter, is kind of an unknown as to whether he can handle the job or not. And then behind those two guys are like Troy Dye, William Kwenku, Troy Reeder, not exactly a murderer's row. So I think that Pace is looking at that inside linebacker room and thinking, hey, I might not play much or at all in 2023, but in 2024, I could maybe even be a starter for the Vikings. Mm-hmm. And, I think when you look at the type of player that Pace is, plays with his hair on fire, super like another Energizer bunny, you don't think that he saw that Brian Flores is the defensive coordinator here, the way that Flores is such an intense guy, fiery guy. I think that he liked the fact that Flores was going to be his coach.
Mm-hmm. I don't doubt it in the slightest. I think it's a good move by him. That brings us to Andre Carter.
Andre Carter, again, this is the other guy that would have caught, I think, everybody's attention. He had 14 and a half sacks his junior year. Now, last year, fell off a lot. Had 3.5 sacks. Don't know what happened there. Didn't get drafted. But, again, he's almost 6'7", about 260 pounds or a bit more. And the Vikings, the edge rushers that we have now, if we keep everybody we have, and we probably won't, but – if you look at it, Danielle Hunter, Zadarius Smith, you got DJ Wanham, you got Patrick Jones, the third, and you got Marcus Davenport that you just signed. So that's a pretty full edge room. Mm-hmm. Andre Carter, again, much like Jaron Hall in the quarterback position, Andre Carter is a guy that you can develop. He's got the size. He's had production in the past. He's got a lot of things that you like. He's got to work on he's got to work on his craft. He's got to work on his pass rush moves and that sort of thing. But he's a guy that doesn't have to play in 2023. He can make the team, but he doesn't have to play. You can work on him. Mike Smith, the edge linebackers coach, can work with him for a year and have him ready to go in 2024 potentially. At that point, DJ Wanham probably isn't with the Vikings anymore. Zadarius Smith, if he was there in 2023, is probably not there in 2024. Carter could maybe be a rotational depth piece. And again, when you look at his production 2 years ago, well worth taking a swing as an undrafted rookie free agent, I think.
The only problem I see with Carter, he's a young border bar lieutenant. And the vets that are watching this now know what sort of problem that brings us. They will probably have to assign him an NCO just so he can find his way to the Egan and the practice facility without getting lost. It's the way it is. Last time we signed a young lieutenant, he played for a couple of years, Mr. Austin Cutting. So it's going to be interesting to see how he works out. Now, rules are they can play, but they will also be simultaneous members in the reserves. He's going to have that stuff outside of playing football. So he's going to be a busy man. I hope he sticks and does well at that. I hope all the UDFAs, bust nut and make a name for themselves. So
there's some other guys.
yes, Dean. The rules are they can play now.
There's some other guys from amongst these 15 maybe to watch out for. Catlin Avery, the big nose tackle from Illinois. He was one of the top 30 visits. Again, a humongous guy, 345 pounds or something like that. Not a whole lot of production wise to speak of. If you're looking for sacks or a whole bunch of tackles, he didn't have that. But that's kind of typical, I think, of a big run stuffing nose tackle. They take on 2 or 3 blockers and everybody else makes the play, right? So somebody to watch for there, because we don't, again, defensive line, he's somebody who might not make the team, but practice squad, hey, you never know. We took signed 3 cornerbacks. So
filled
now
the room,
we have,
baby. So we said we would.
Yeah, along with the 2 we drafted and the 3 that we got as undrafted rookie free agents. You got 11 now by my count in the room. One of those corners maybe take a look at would be CJ Colden, who was played for Oklahoma last year, I believe, and a transfer from Wyoming. He had 4 interceptions last year with Oklahoma. So had a bit of a ball hawk season. Maybe somebody to keep an eye on. He's 6'1", so he's got the kind of size that the Vikings and Kwesi Dofa-Mensah likes. So somebody to look out for there. And there's a whole bunch of guys that, just to keep an eye out on. Another fella, Cephas Johnson, I was just reading up on him. He's listed as a wide receiver when we signed him, but he actually played quarterback at Southeastern Louisiana. And so he's kind of like a Joe Webb dude.
Okay.
6'4", 225 pounds, ran a 4.5 40. Not great quarterback stats, but could be kind of a dual threat dude.
Emergency quarterback, stuff like that.
But really excited about particularly Pace and Carter and the Vikings undrafted free agents the last 2 or 3 years. They haven't had much oomph, Dave. They really haven't. Last year's class really did. You didn't notice them in preseason at all. And, there was no Eric Wilson. There was no Mike Boone. There was nobody like that. I think this year is going to be a big difference, that guys like Pace, like Carter, somebody like Avery,
even. Yeah,
some of these corners, I think we're going to notice them. And I think that some of these guys are actually they are going to have a role for the Vikings, maybe not in 2023, but a year or 2 down the line. And that's good to see, because that's good scouting.
You missed one, though. As an unrestricted free agent, undrafted free agent, they signed a kicker.
Yes. Bud Lesney from Georgia.
Yep. To compete at that position. We'll see how he does. He did hit 98% of his extra points. So, who knows? He supposedly doesn't have the range. He's not quite as accurate beyond 45 yards, which will hurt him in the NFL. They like him to hit the 50-plus yarders. But
yes, they do.
It's going to be interesting that we're going to have a kicking competition to watch, at least for a little while.
And that's what I wanted and talked about a few weeks ago, Dave, is that I think Greg Joseph needs to be challenged, and maybe Podlesny will challenge him. Like you said, don't know so much about if he's got the leg to stick in the NFL, but the extra point thing, that is a big problem for Joseph in the 2 years he's been a Vikings kicker, and it could cost him a job eventually.
Yep, could be. Well, that's the quickest rundown of the undrafted free agents we've gone through. Again, as they make a name for themselves throughout the summer and into camp, we'll bring you more and more on that. With that, we go on to theme 3. We got King Chris TV saying we stole Addison from us, but paired him up with Jefferson. Yes, it's going to be a sweet pairing, and I think it's going to be outstanding.
Looking forward to it.
And King Chris, that looks like a Bears hat you're wearing. We won't hold that against you. Welcome to the show.
Yes.
Theme 3, we're going to look back. We talked about grading drafts. Everybody's got to grade the draft. How'd they do? Which team did well? Which team did poorly? Which team? We're going to grade them against the consensus board. We're going to grade them against this, the impact, this and that. And all the grades are coming out. And as we all know, they're normally bullshit. I could see grading against the consensus board as to where people pick players. You get, bonus points if they fell below their consensus value and you snagged them down here. We did so with McBride. You lose points if you reach, and pick them higher, right? But even with that, the team goes for the player they want. Did they get the player they want? Or could get at that time, because obviously some players are gone by then, wanting Anthony Richardson. Could we get him? No, sorry. So that's obviously a bonus for us. But was a consensus big board? I'll give you an example. For Jalen Hall was a lot higher. He was consensus third rounder. We got him in the fifth. That was good. When they ranked the teams, the big value one was the Browns, because they got a whole lot of value all across the board. Does that mean the Browns are going to be good? Not at all. We were about middle of the pack. So I'm comfortable with that. We weren't bad. We weren't good. We were just there. So, but we've always said and always heard you can't really grade a draft class until it's 3 years out, right? Grading them now is sort of silly. They haven't touched a football on an NFL field yet. So you don't know how good they're going to be in the system. King Chris is a Giants fan. Well, good for you. The G-Men, it's going to be an interesting year for you guys. I hope you whoop the shit out of the Cowboys.
I like some of the picks the Giants made this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nutter says, let's grade these players in 3 years. Well, that's what Themes 3 is about. We're looking at the Vikings 2020 draft class here. Well, should be good. We had 15 picks that season. That was a Rick Spielman special. Give him picks, more picks, trade down for more picks, try to own the 7th round. But how'd he do?
Yes, how did he do, David? We'll be going into year 4 of that draft class. So like you said, I think there's enough data out there for all the players that were those 15 guys that I think that we can make an assessment of how good that draft class was. And just in case anybody's curious, that 15 player draft class was the largest the Vikings had since the 1976 draft class, when the Vikings picked 17 players. Now, a little bit different time back then because you had 12 rounds
Yep.
back in 76. But also, just in case you're wondering, that 76 draft class, it wasn't bad. They picked James Duck White, the defensive tackle, in the first round out of Oklahoma State that year. And then second round, they got one of our favorites, Sammy White out of Grambling. As a second round pick back then. Those were 2 of the 17 guys the Vikings drafted, which again was the largest draft class the Vikings had up until, or that's been 2020 was that was the only you have to go that far back to get a draft class as bigger than the 15 that Rick Spielman picked. And I think looking back at the 2020 draft class, Dave. We've criticized Spielman. He was criticized quite heavily at the end of his tenure for his draft classes and his personnel moves, trading for Herndon, the tight end, trading away a 4th rounder for him or whatever.
Defensive end from Baltimore,
Yannick Ngakoue, trading a 3rd for him and then trading him in 2 games later for a 4th. But looking back at this 2020 draft class, those 15 players, let's assess. Of course, Justin Jefferson was the first pick in that class. And if the other 14 guys had washed out, that the fact that you drafted Justin Jefferson got a guy that's now one of the top 3 wide receivers and probably possibly the top wide receiver in the NFL. If he keeps on going the way he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yes.
That would mean, and at an impact position in today's NFL, that would make this
position, yes.
Yeah, that would make this draft class, I think, a good one because you got an all-timer, Justin Jefferson, worth 5 guys who are mediocre, who are just good players. So that's that. But the thing about this draft is it's just not Justin Jefferson we got. We drafted Ezra Cleveland in the 2nd round. He's become a solid left guard, started pretty much all of his 3 previous seasons with the team.
Drafted as a tackle and immediately got stuck at guard.
Hey,
whether you liked it or not. Yes.
He's making it work.
Well,
you got him there. We drafted KJ Osborne, who's basically been a starter on the offense as a wide receiver, as our number 3 guy. We got him in the 5th round. Beyond KJ Osborne, Ezra Cleveland, and Justin Jefferson, you've got guys like, let's look at it, DJ Wanham. Not a special player, not a superstar, but in 4th round guy out of South Carolina. He's been a starter at times when we ran a 4-3 as a defensive end, but he's been a backup who's played a significant amount of snaps. Right now, he's the first edge guy off the bench to replace usually Z Smith or Daniil Hunter. He's been, a decent player, a contributor for the team, sometimes a positive contributor. Beyond him, you've got Blake Brandel, 6th rounder. He's become our backup left tackle, has started some games. Sometimes, he might be our swing tackle who plays both. He's been a guy who's developed, has improved. Josh Metellus, another 6th rounder. He's one of our best special teams players, and he's developed into a pretty solid backup safety. Like when he had to play for Harrison Smith this year, he played well in his absence. And even James Linth is another guy. He hasn't quite had the impact I was hoping for when we got him out of Baylor, considering he was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year coming out of college. But again, he's a guy who is in the defensive line rotation. He plays anywhere between 15 to 20 snaps a game. He's a guy the Vikings seem to trust. He's a contributor to this team. And then even Troy Dye, not a guy who starts, but a core special teamer. So even Kenny Willekes, who was in the 7th round, he flashed in 2021 as in the 4-3 defensive end. Now, unfortunately, he's been put on the IR in 2020 and in 2022, and he missed the entire season. Now, I don't know what his future is with this team, but he's another guy who's got some potential. We did have some misses in that draft class. Of course, Jeff Gladney only lasted the 1 year as a rookie, got into some legal trouble. We waived him. Cardinals signed him, and then he died. Yeah, died in a car accident. And then Cam Dantzler, who was a guy I really had high hopes for, up and down as a Viking, and then we waived him this year, and now he's with Washington.
We'll eventually find out what the backstory is on that, and it's going to be fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a decent class.
You got 8 guys out of the 15 who are either 3 of them are starters, and you've got another 5 who are backups or contributors in some way or another, going into their 4th year in the NFL. I think that, it's not as good as the 215 class because you got 3 impact studs out of that class: Daniil Hunter, Stephon Diggs, and Eric Kendricks, right? We got 1 stud, and he's a huge stud in Justin Jefferson. So it's not as good as that class, but it's a pretty damn good class. And, we give Rick Spielman a lot of grief, but that class worked out well I think was a good class for him. It's been a good class for the Vikings, and it does lead a little bit of it shows that his theory about how you want a lot of lottery picks in the NFL draft lottery does make sense. The more darts you got,
yes,
it can make. The more darts you got to throw at the dartboard, the better chance you have at hitting the bullseye.
But you want those quality impact players, like Kwesi says, That's the key. Those impact players are what I've said, move that expected points per average temp, EPA, whatever it is, number up. You want those. And then everybody else could be the rest. And as long as they're not bad. And that's the way they go. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. We gave Spielman a decent grade on that draft. It'll be very good, especially when we expect JJ to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. If he continues, it's interesting. 3 years from now, we'll do the same thing with this draft from Kwesi. And let's see how that goes. We're still waiting on last year's draft from Kwesi. So we'll find out. We're excited about this year's draft. We're excited about some of those unrestricted free agents they signed, the undrafted free agents. And we're going to get more and more into it as this week goes on, and the next weeks throughout the summer. We're going to keep deep diving into it until we see these guys actually play. Any last words there, Darren?
I think next week, I think with this draft and looking into the players, I'm going to start with the 7th round and go down. Okay. So I think probably we'll take a look at McBride next week as the first one, as one of our things. And it won't be in time for next week, but I guess the next kind of thing that fans are looking for is that the NFL schedule is going to come out, I think, on
the 11th. Yep.
11th. And then we'll get to see who, we know who we're playing, but we don't know when we're playing them and how that's all going to line up. So that's going to be a date to put on your calendar to kind of decide, take a look at how the Vikings schedule is going to shake out. And
you can almost wager that Philadelphia will be in prime time in December in Philadelphia.
yeah, on their crappy field turf.
Yeah.
And the Vikings will wear like the shortest cleats possible so they can slip and slide all over the place.
But I want to thank everybody that joined us today. We've had a great day, great week. Continue to get the rest of this afternoon because we all got to go back to work tomorrow and hit it again. Tomorrow night we have the Real Forno show. Tyler will be going more into the draft. He's hot and heavy about it. He's still celebrating Jalen Hall being selected, and I'm sure we're going to hear about that tomorrow night. Plus, we have some guests lined up in the future. So this is going to be fun, growing. We passed 500 on subscribers on YouTube. And a little less than 2 months. We appreciate that greatly. You guys warm our hearts. We still want to grow some more, get bigger, better, and let's go on from there. We love you all. And what do we say?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings! Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!